She didn't cry out, didn't run, didn't even raise her voice, just one word, whispered as she passed him. SOS. And that was all the royal guard needed to hear. Because Princess Charlotte didn't trip, didn't fumble her line, didn't panic in front of the cameras. She was hurt, right there, in Windsor's inner courtyard, in full view of staff and stewards, with Queen Camilla standing just steps away. And when Sergeant Lucan Graham saw the swelling on her arm, when he heard what Charlotte said through clenched teeth, he didn't wait for clearance, didn't ask for orders. He moved. And what happened next? Split the palace in two. But before we show you the moment Camilla's access was revoked and the emergency team closed in around the heir's daughter, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Tap like, hit subscribe, and make sure that bell icon is turned on. Because this wasn't a stumble. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a royal guard who heard the quietest cry for help and answered it. The Windsor Castle quadrangle was unusually quiet for a late morning. A temporary dais had been erected in the southeast corner, just beside the outer edge of the herbarium wall. Modest, nothing grand. The rehearsal wasn't for a coronation or a jubilee, just a small, internally arranged conservation event designed for heritage donors, youth programs, and a televised children's speech later that weekend. It was meant to be gentle, unpressured. The sort of thing a young girl could look back on and smile about years later. Princess Charlotte stood near the steps of the platform in a pale blue coat dress, white gloves slightly oversized, clutching a printed card with a single sentence on it, her sentence. Her voice would open the event, a message about nature, about protecting the land. The rehearsal was limited. No reporters, no crowds. Just a technical team adjusting sound levels, a pair of stewards moving folding chairs across the gravel, and a Coldstream Guard stationed at the base of the stage steps, tall, steady, and silent. His name was Sergeant Lucan Graham, and like every guard trained to serve within Windsor's active protocol zones, he understood exactly how to remain invisible without missing a single detail. At 36, Lucan had served across Kandahar, Basra, and parts of Mali before joining ceremonial duty. This wasn't pageantry to him, it was preservation, legacy work, guarding not just the people, but the meaning behind them. He watched Charlotte without staring. She was focused. Her lips moved silently, reciting the line over and over. He'd seen her glance toward Prince William earlier, her father giving the smallest, warmest nod of encouragement from where he stood by a folded program table. A father's smile, not a prince's. Further back, Catherine stood in quiet conversation with the palace liaison and one of the event's child development consultants. She wasn't hovering. She was watching, always watching. Lucan's eyes swept the courtyard with professional regularity until something changed. A set of heels clicked sharply across the pavers behind the trellis arch. He recognized the rhythm before he saw the source. Queen Camilla. She wasn't scheduled to attend the rehearsal. Lucan didn't flinch, but he shifted just slightly on his boots. His stance widened, imperceptibly, unless you knew what to look for. Camilla crossed the open space with a tight smile and a clipboard in hand, flanked by a junior equerry trying to keep pace. She gestured toward the platform. "Let's make this real," she said brightly. "Best to correct posture while it still matters." The stage tech looked confused. So did Charlotte. Camilla ascended the side steps, brushed past the coordinator, and placed a guiding hand on Charlotte's shoulder. Not gentle, not firm, possessive. She leaned in, whispering something the techs couldn't hear. Sergeant Lucan didn't move, but inside his mind, something small just shifted. He could feel it. And the day that was meant for harmony had already begun to tilt. Camilla did not step away after her initial comment. She stayed beside Charlotte, one hand still on the girl's shoulder, the other gesturing toward the front microphones as if she'd been part of the planning all along. The tone she used was almost instructive, polished, deliberate, but there was no warmth in it. "Again," she said, lightly tapping the edge of the card. "You rush through the phrasing when you're nervous. Steady pace. Straight spine. Charlotte nodded, drawing a slow breath. Her small boots shifted on the temporary stage as she prepared to recite her line once more. On behalf of our generation, No, Camilla cut in instantly. You're collapsing your stance. Look at your shoulders. She stepped closer, fingers sliding down Charlotte's upper arm. Then, without asking, she turned her slightly, a correction that was more forceful than necessary. Charlotte's balance wavered for a half-second before she caught herself. Lucan's gaze sharpened. He noted it. The tension in the girl's jaw, the unnatural tightness in how she held her breath. "Is the mic too high?" a technician called out, uncertainly. "It's not the mic," Camilla replied. "It's the footing. She's letting nerves take over." Charlotte wet her lips. "I'm okay," she murmured. Camilla's expression tightened faintly. "Then don't look like you're bracing for impact." Lucan stepped forward one pace, still within the boundaries of formality, still neutral in posture, but close enough now to monitor the shifting energy on the stage. Charlotte tried again. "On behalf of our generation, I'd like to speak for—" Her voice trembled mid-sentence. Camilla exhaled sharply through her nose. "Charlotte!" The name wasn't affectionate. It was clipped. She placed her hand behind Charlotte's back and pressed slightly, trying to straighten her posture from behind. But the pressure didn't let up when Charlotte adjusted. It increased, slowly coaxing the girl forward with an expectation rather than guidance. Charlotte winced. She didn't cry out, just a soft inhalation of discomfort that made Lucan stiffen ever so slightly on his stance. "Stop shrinking," Camilla whispered. "Do you want to look incapable?" "I'm trying," Charlotte replied quietly. "Then try harder." Camilla moved around her, just out of view of the cluster of technicians, and tugged at the side of her coat, jerking her a few inches into position as if she were adjusting an inanimate prop. The movement was sharp. Charlotte's shoulders dropped and her expression faltered, eyes instinctively drifting past the microphones toward the back of the courtyard, searching for Catherine, for William, for anyone who looked like familiarity. But no one intervened. Not yet. Prince William had been speaking with a logistics advisor, unaware of the tonal shift. Catherine's attention was briefly focused on a staging board being handed to her. There was movement everywhere, just enough chaos to mask the slow escalation happening in plain sight. Lucan saw all of it. He saw how Charlotte's knuckles tightened around the card, how her breathing turned shallow, how Camilla's hand never truly left her arm. And when Camilla leaned in again, voice slipping lower, more private, "Posture, Charlotte. Royal children do not behave like frightened schoolgirls." There was no microphone to catch it. But Lucan heard every poisoned edge of it. He remained silent. He remained formal. But his entire focus had narrowed into one thing, the space between Charlotte and your grasp. And it was beginning to feel far too small. The rehearsal had lost its softness. The courtyard air, once calm and ceremonial, now held a tension that didn't belong in a day meant for children, and Camilla still hadn't stepped back. It happened in silence, the kind that feels deliberate. The techs had just finished adjusting the volume on the wireless lapel unit clipped to the back of Charlotte's sash. A sound engineer gave a soft thumbs up to the liaison steward across the courtyard. Prince William was no longer in immediate earshot. Catherine had been called toward the entrance gate by a visiting coordinator. Everyone's focus was splintered. Everyone, except Lucan Graham. From where he stood, 6 paces from the dais stairs, he saw the alignment of details most missed. Charlotte was standing too close to the edge of the raised platform, her right boot half overlapping the brass trim. Camilla's hands had returned to her shoulders, not in reassurance, but in control. Charlotte's chin dipped again, her voice barely audible now. Camilla's tone dropped to a dagger's whisper. "You're spoiling the entire program. Straighten." The hand on Charlotte's left shoulder tightened. Too much. Charlotte winced and tried to step forward, but Camilla's grip didn't loosen. She leaned in harder, one palm at Charlotte's upper back, pushing. Lucan's body locked. Then the moment cracked open. Charlotte let out a short, involuntary yelp. Not loud, not dramatic, but raw. Lucan took a half step forward. Not protocol, not formation, instinct. Camilla didn't retreat. She didn't recoil in alarm. She pulled harder. A sharp, corrective motion meant to silence the sound, to force posture rather than concern for pain. And that's when Charlotte's foot slipped. She stumbled sideways, her forearm catching the sharp corner of the metal step bracket as she collapsed down off the raised platform. The clang echoed across the courtyard like a dropped piece of armour. Charlotte gasped and clutched her right arm with both hands. Her glove fell off. Her card skittered across the gravel. Her breathing became short and panicked. Lucan was moving before his brain finished the calculation. He crossed the distance in 3 strides, pausing only because 2 handlers reached her first. But what he saw turned the movement from reflex to confirmation. Her forearm was already swelling, fast and angry-looking, just below the wrist. The skin was blotched red along the curve of the bone, and her eyes, wide, unblinking, were locked on Camilla, not out of guilt, but fear. A murmur rippled across the staff. A technician's clipboard hit the ground. One of the stewards moved toward the royal tent, his headset crackling to life. Catherine turned. William heard the sound and turned too. But for one long second, before the royals began moving, before the flurry of aides responded, before anyone said anything at all, it was just Charlotte, sitting on the gravel, holding her arm, and trying not to cry, trying not to draw attention, trying to figure out if it was her fault. Camilla had taken a step forward, as if to kneel, as if to offer concern, but Charlotte flinched. She physically recoiled from the gesture. And that was the moment Lucan knew. This wasn't a rehearsal gone wrong. This wasn't a stumble. This was injury. And the source of that injury was still standing on the dais, unrepentant, unafraid, and until someone said otherwise, no, still in authority, but not for much longer. Charlotte did not scream. That was the strangest part of all of it. She didn't cry for her mother, didn't call for her father, didn't clutch for attention. She stayed perfectly still where she sat on the gravel, shoulders drawn in, teeth clenched, as if sound itself might make it worse. The only movement was the slow tremor in her injured arm as she tried to keep it close to her body. A steward knelt beside her, asking softly if she could move her fingers. A technician hovered with a medical kit, visibly unsure whether to touch her or wait. Camilla spoke first. Her voice carried across the paused courtyard with practiced composure. She tripped. The steps were poorly fitted. There was no apology in it, no hesitation, just a problem to be rationalized. Lucan didn't respond. His attention remained fixed on Charlotte, and Charlotte alone. He shifted his position slightly to give her clearer sightlines, and that was when she turned her head. Not toward the stewards, not toward Camilla, not even toward her father, who was now moving across the gravel toward her with urgency in his stride. She looked at him. Sergeant Lucan Graham. Her face was pale, her lips dry, eyelashes wet but unshed. He stepped closer, aware that a guard kneeling beside a royal child wasn't technically sanctioned, but neither was ignoring a wounded one. He kept his voice low as he leaned slightly, just enough so only she could hear. "Charlotte, can you hear me?" A tiny nod. Her eyes darted once, briefly, back toward Camilla, midway down from the dais. "She hurt me," Charlotte whispered. The words weren't dramatic. They weren't loud. They weren't rehearsed. They were just said. And then came the second part, urgent now, almost breathless. "SOS, please don't let her come near me." Lucan felt the instant shift run through his spine like electricity. He didn't ask anything else, didn't probe, didn't question. The tone was clear. The context was visible. The injury was real. He straightened, and in that single movement, something irreversible changed. He turned his head and pressed 2 fingers against the concealed comm channel along the seam of his glove. "Code Amber. Active incident," he said firmly, voice controlled. "Immediate medical presence and restricted perimeter around the platform. No clearance request. No approval pause, no consultation. A direct breach. Camilla had already descended the steps now, moving toward Charlotte with one hand raised as though to soothe. "She's fine, Sergeant," she said briskly. "It's a minor stumble. There's no need to escalate this." Lucan stepped sideways, instantly and solidly blocking her approach. His tone did not rise. His posture did not harden, but his presence widened unmistakably. "For the moment," he said evenly, "no one approaches her." There was a beat of shock. Camilla looked him over as if trying to identify where his authority had come from. "You will step aside," she snapped. "I'm comforting my granddaughter." Charlotte's hand tightened around Lucan's sleeve. "No," she whispered again. "Please." Lucan didn't repeat her words. He didn't acknowledge them verbally. He just held position. Behind him, William's footfalls closed in quickly now, boots crunching over gravel, his eyes locked directly on Charlotte's visibly swollen arm. His expression faltered the moment he saw it. "Charlotte," he said sharply, "what happened?" Lucan turned his head only slightly, just enough to respond without shifting his body away from the child. "She reported harm," he said calmly. "I've activated emergency support." The words carried. Technicians heard them. Stewards froze mid-step. An aide glanced sharply toward the dais. The space changed. This was no longer a rehearsal. This was a breach. William knelt beside his daughter, his hand hovering near her shoulder, uncertain whether to move the arm. Catherine approached from the rear, face drawn tight in silent alarm. And Camilla, still standing a step too close, was now on the opposite side of a line that hadn't existed 2 minutes earlier, a line the Royal Guard had just drawn, with nothing but his stance. And Charlotte had never once let go of his sleeve. The courtyard wasn't loud, it was controlled, which made the sudden change even more jarring. Not chaos, but halted function, like someone had thrown a switch and every part of the palace machine had stopped mid-step. Sergeant Lucan Graham no longer stood on the edge of the stage, and he was down on one knee beside Princess Charlotte, not as a father or a medic or a counsellor, but as a soldier standing between a child and further harm. Camilla remained a few feet away, her gloved hand still half raised in baffled, outraged disbelief. "She tripped," she repeated again, now louder, as if repetition might convert it into truth. "That platform is unstable. I told them, 'Back away!'" came Prince William's voice, sharp enough to slice clean through the courtyard. He wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. Camilla turned, incredulous. "Excuse me?" "She's injured," William said coldly, gesturing toward Charlotte's arm, "and she just told a guard she was hurt by someone." "I corrected her stance," Camilla snapped. "You're going to crucify me for helping her stand straight?" Lucan didn't respond. His fingers remained light against Charlotte's back, just anchoring her upright, not holding. A flash of movement cut across the edge of the platform. Medical personnel, 2 responders from the palace's on-site trauma team, moving quickly but without frenzy. One carried a compression pack and a slim diagnostic scanner. The other had the orange med-badge armband wrapped tight around her blazer sleeve. Lucan stood the moment they arrived. "Swelling along the right forearm," he reported clinically. "Blunt edge impact. Possible sprain or fracture. Victim in shock." He said victim, not child. And the word landed. One of the medics knelt beside Charlotte, while the other set up a privacy divider between the platform and the crowd gathering on the outer walk. Prince William hovered as the diagnosis began. Charlotte's sleeve was lifted gently. The skin beneath had darkened in a matter of minutes. The swelling had doubled since Lucan first saw it. A faint line was already blooming near the ulna, subtle but unmistakably wrong. The female medic leaned in and looked at Lucan. "She needs to be moved." William turned. "To the medical wing." "No time," she said. "We stabilize now." Lucan gave a sharp nod. "I'll secure the radius." He turned to block the view of gathering staff. Catherine had arrived behind them, her hands flat at her sides, not trembling, but locked. Her eyes moved only once, from Charlotte's arm to Camilla's face. "Lucan," she said softly, "who reported harm?" He didn't hesitate. "Princess Charlotte did, directly, and clearly." William straightened. Camilla took a sharp breath, stepping forward. That's being blown out of "Leave now." It wasn't a request. It wasn't even shouted, just final. Camilla looked between them. Catherine, silent but seething. William planted like stone. Charlotte now flinching every time she shifted. And Lucan, the royal guard who had broken every protocol in the book. And yet not a single person had told him to stop. She tried one last time. "I was coaching her." "You laid hands on my daughter," William snapped. "And now she's injured. You are not her instructor. You are not her guardian. You will step back." Two palace aides moved in behind Camilla without being asked. One motioned quietly toward the side gate. The message was clear. Her access to the rehearsal zone was revoked. Not debated, not explained, just enforced. Camilla's mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out, and Lucan saw it in her eyes now. Not rage, not entitlement. Shock. This wasn't just a scolding, this was a fracture in the royal chain, and she had slipped to the wrong side of it. The moment the side gate latched behind Camilla, the entire rehearsal space transformed. The event was not cancelled aloud, no official announcement came over the radios, but the energy collapsed inward, like a building cleared floor by floor in silence. Aides abandoned clipboard duties. Chairs meant for the donor audience were left half-folded. The microphone test was aborted mid-sentence. Even the castle steward assigned to royal press pacing quietly slid their phone into their coat and backed away. Catherine remained beside Charlotte, who now sat propped against a stabilising wedge brought in by the medics. Her injured arm was elevated and bound in a temporary support brace, wrapped in cool gel fabric, with micro-adhesive sensors mapping pulse and nerve pressure. The diagnostic tablet didn't beep. It documented. Lucan stood nearby, no longer a ceremonial fixture, but an active participant in a safeguarding breach. His posture hadn't wavered, but his eyes now tracked everything. He watched not for threats, but for silence. Tumnyang, the kind that follows the beginning of consequences. William stepped aside with the head of internal security, Captain Wynne, for a brief exchange away from Charlotte's earshot. "She said it clearly," Lucan heard William state. "She said she was hurt. She whispered SOS. Captain Wynne's jaw tightened. "Then this is no longer internal logistics. It's safeguarding protocol." Understood. Across the gravel, Camilla's absence had created a vacuum no one tried to fill. The event coordinator spoke briefly to the technical director, then disappeared entirely into the northeast wing. A press secretary made a call from the shaded corridor, speaking too quietly to be heard, but nodding once, sharply, before hanging up. Inside the med tent, one of the responders turned toward Catherine with her findings. "She has soft tissue damage along the mid-forearm, likely from blunt-edge impact. We're seeing early indications of a microfracture. No nerve damage, but her reaction was delayed. She likely suppressed it for several minutes before vocalizing." Catherine didn't blink. She didn't cry. She simply said, "Thank you. Please record everything under family seal and provide the security tag to me directly." The medic nodded. "We're recommending full imaging and immobilization." "I'll walk her myself," Catherine replied. One of the stewards stepped in with a modest privacy screen and helped clear a path toward the side entrance of the castle. No ceremony, no announcement. Charlotte didn't speak. She didn't look around. She simply kept her eyes down and clutched the corner of her coat with her good hand as Catherine led her quietly out of view. Lucan remained until the last step had been cleared. Then he turned and found William facing him. There was no ceremony in the man's tone. No, your service is noted. No royal distance. Only this. You acted without hesitation. Lucan didn't respond. William stepped closer. "And you were right." Then he turned and followed his wife and daughter into the castle. Captain Wynne remained behind and gave a single nod to the technical director. "Clear the courtyard. Everything's suspended." And just like that, the day ended. But the record had already begun. The Windsor Castle medical wing was never meant to look clinical. It wasn't white-tiled or fluorescent lit. It was warm, Sandstone walls, polished wooden beams, soft chairs upholstered in historical patterns. The walls bore oil portraits of long-past royal physicians, a place designed to calm, not intimidate. But today, it wasn't calming, it was evidence. Princess Charlotte sat on the padded bench beneath the eastern window, her arm now fully immobilized in a temporary brace. The swelling had spread along the lateral forearm. Her right glove, the one that had fallen earlier, sat untouched beside her on the cushion, dirt-stained and crumpled. Catherine knelt in front of her, helping ease a blanket over her knees. Her hand moved to adjust the collar of Charlotte's dress, then hesitated, as if afraid even that small contact might add pressure. The royal paediatric physician, a woman in her 60s with soft hands and a worn gold watch, had just finished her scan. "She's lucky," she said gently, voice measured but tight. "It's a shallow fracture, no displacement, but the pain is real, and the psychological shock matters just as much." William stood a few feet away, his arms crossed tightly, not in anger, but restraint. "Will she need surgery?" "No," the doctor replied, "but she needs to rest. The joint needs to be immobilized until full imaging confirms no microfissures. I'd like to do the x-rays tonight." William gave a slow nod. Catherine remained silent. Charlotte's voice was small. "Do I have to miss the event?" "You don't have to do anything, darling," Catherine said softly, "and certainly not anything that hurts." There was a pause. Then Charlotte asked, "Will she be there?" Catherine looked up, then over to William, before answering, "No. She's not allowed near you, not now, not again until this is resolved." Charlotte's lip quivered, not from pain, but relief. The doctor stepped back, quietly typing notes into the secured family medical terminal mounted near the wall. At the far end of the room, Captain Wynne waited with a printed document, the preliminary safeguarding report. He handed it to William without speaking. The top was stamped with the internal code, Escalate 11-32, minor reported harm, under 18, active review triggered. William skimmed it, jaw clenched. Catherine took it from him halfway through and added one line in her own handwriting beneath the action log. "Victim's own verbal report confirmed. Witnessed by Royal Guard." Catherine, perdu, Po. She signed and returned it to Wynne. Then she turned to Lucan, who now stood at attention near the far wall, his uniform immaculate despite the long hours. "You've submitted your statement?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Recorded and sealed." "Then your orders remain active," she said. "You are to remain under family assignment until further notice." Lucan inclined his head. "Yes, Princess?" She looked at Charlotte, then back at him. "Thank you," she added, "for not waiting." Lucan didn't respond. He didn't need to. Across the castle, security access logs were already being rewritten. Camilla's clearances had been suspended for 4 child access areas. Her scheduled public appearances had been removed from the next week's slate. Her family liaison detail had been pulled. No announcement had been made, but within the palace walls the inquiry had begun. And it wouldn't be buried. Not this time. The secured anteroom beside the Sovereign's chapel wasn't listed on any visitor maps. It wasn't large, just a fire-lit chamber with thick curtains, 2 upholstered chairs, and an antique sideboard bearing nothing but a single crystal water carafe. Camilla stood at the far end, arms folded, her bag still hooked over one wrist. Her coat was pristine, her shoes perfectly polished. She hadn't been informed why she'd been called here, but she knew. The silence was punctuated only by the faint click of the lock as the inner door opened, and Prince William entered. He didn't pace, but didn't square his shoulders like a soldier. He walked like a man who had spent the last 2 hours reigning in something he could no longer excuse. Camilla spoke first. "William, this has gotten wildly out of hand. I was merely guiding her." He raised a hand, once, sharply. "No." Camilla blinked. William closed the door behind him and stepped into the room. He didn't sit. He didn't offer her that comfort. "She's got a fracture," he said. "A doctor confirmed it. You left visible bruising on her arm." "She slipped," Camilla snapped, defensive now. "I told the techs that step was unstable." "She didn't slip." His voice was flat. "She told the guard that you hurt her. She said SOS. Do you understand what that means?" Camilla's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "It means she felt unsafe," William continued. "So unsafe that she reached out not to me, not to her mother, but to a guard in public during a rehearsal, because that was the only way she thought someone might help her." "She's 8, Camilla said tightly. "Children say things, misunderstand things. And yet the swelling on her arm doesn't seem confused." Camilla shifted her weight, jaw clenching. "You're taking Catherine's word for it." William stepped forward once, just once. "No, I'm taking my daughter's." A long silence. Outside the walls, the muffled sound of booted steps carried faintly down the stone corridor. Somewhere, a security radio crackled and clicked off again. William let the silence settle, then continued. Not loud, but lower, darker. "You're going to hear this plainly, and only once. You are no longer permitted unsupervised access to Charlotte, George, or Louis. That's not a punishment. That's a response. You can't." "I can." His voice didn't rise, but it landed like a hammer. "And I will escalate further if needed. Catherine is already compiling the safeguarding record for full internal filing. You can cooperate, or you can be escorted." Camilla's lips trembled, not out of sorrow, but from disbelief. "You're turning this into a scandal." "I'm keeping it from becoming a cover-up," William said. He opened the door. Outside stood a guard and one female palace steward, already briefed. Camilla didn't move at first. Then she adjusted her coat, drew her chin high, and walked out. No words, no apologies. Only the click of her heels echoing down a corridor that no longer welcomed her, and in the stone-cold silence she left behind. William didn't follow her. He just stayed, frozen for one breath longer, before returning to the only place that mattered now, the medical wing, where his daughter waited, and where Camilla would never be allowed near again. Night fell without ceremony. No bells rang, no flags shifted. But inside the walls of Windsor, everything had changed. The palace itinerary, once locked 3 weeks in advance, was being quietly redrafted in real time. Camilla's name was removed from 2 upcoming youth appearances. Her transport request for Monday was marked "Hold pending security review." One aide was instructed to cancel her speaking notes for a school arts event and reassigned the opening line to Princess Anne. No reasons were published, no explanations given, just removals, one by one. The internal security log recorded 5 new access restrictions before midnight, each of them tied to Camilla's proximity to underage royals. The code accompanying them wasn't punitive. It was procedural. S-gate trigger, pending safeguard review, and the guard who set it in motion, Sergeant Lucan Graham, returned to his quarters past 11 p.m., uniform still crisp from the emergency protocol he'd refused to delay. He didn't remove his gloves right away. Instead, he stood beside his narrow window and looked out over the inner courtyard, now empty, silent, washed in a faint golden hue from the high-mounted lanterns. He could still hear her voice, not Camilla's, Charlotte's. "SOS. She hurt me. Please." There were entire manuals about what not to do in moments like that, but none of them accounted for a child breaking through centuries of hierarchy to whisper the one thing no adult should ever ignore. And he hadn't. A soft knock broke his stillness. When he opened the door, he found a sealed envelope on the floor, weighted with a coin. No signature, no markings. Inside, a single line handwritten in dark blue ink. "No ceremony, just thank you. C." He said nothing, didn't smile, just folded the note carefully and placed it inside the inner lining of his coat. Elsewhere in the castle, Charlotte was asleep in the medical wing, her arm gently bandaged, pain medication administered, vital signs stable. Catherine had refused a full security escort. She sat beside the bed with her shawl drawn tight, fingers loosely interlaced with her daughter's. William stood near the door, unmoving. The royal family did not speak of disciplinary matters in public, but silence could move faster than scandal. By morning, palace staff would know. By evening, foreign press would speculate. But none of that mattered now. Not compared to a whisper on gravel, not compared to a child who had the courage to say enough, and not compared to the guard who didn't hesitate because instinct told him when a royal child says SOS, protocol waits. But a soldier doesn't. Should the guard have stepped in that fast, or should William have handled it himself? Was this an unforgivable line for Camilla to cross, or is there any way back for her? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if this story kept you watching, don't forget to tap the like button, subscribe to the channel and make sure your bell icon is turned on so you never miss a moment from inside the palace walls. And if you know someone who still believes whispers don't matter, share this video with them. Our other Royal Guard stories should be appearing on your screen right about now, so give those a watch next, and we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, with a brand new story.